What's going on, Titans fans? Welcome back to the first edition of the season of the Glory Day Sports Show. I'm your host, Jake Robertson. Check me out on Twitter/X at Glory Day Sports or our website, glorydaysports.com for our long form, or on YouTube at Glory Day Sports as well. But today we got a big episode. We're going to be hopping into our week one matchup against the New Orleans Saints. We'll talk about that Kansas City Chiefs game, Detroit Lions game from last night a little bit. I'll give you my predictions for the entire season for the Titans. We'll do a little bit of fantasy football talk. We'll talk about Super Bowl predictions, all that good stuff. But before we hop into it, we're going to start off with a quick video from our sponsor, Functional Medical Institute.
What will your last 10 years look like? Will you be quick enough for a game of tag with your grandchild? Strong enough to embrace every moment? Will you grow old with vitality? Or get old with disease? It's time to decide.
Such a powerful message. We're all getting older. I highly recommend checking out Functional Medical Institute, the largest functional medical practice in the world at this point in time. A little over 25,000 active patients all over the world, all 50 states and multiple countries. Anything they can do in the clinic, they can do outside the clinic, from blood work, DNA testing, hormones, peptides, supplementation, nutritional guidance, and they actually care about their patients. So head over to fmigr.com/webinar. If you check out that free webinar that they put on every other Tuesday, you save $100 on your initial consultation, dropping from $289 all the way down to $189, where they sit down with you for 90 minutes and come up with that game plan. Highly love Dr. Mark and Michelle over there at Functional Medical Institute, but check it out. Next up, let's dive into it, guys. So football is back. We are 2 sleeps away from a Titans game. We got a little taste last night with that Chiefs versus Lion matchup. Was a good game. I watched the entire thing. The Lions, they ended up coming out and beating Patrick Mahomes, and Mahomes was just kind of let down by his receivers. I like the Lions this year, but the Chiefs probably should have won the game. I'm sure they'll get Jamar Gibbs more involved in that offense, and the Chiefs, obviously, they'll get Travis Kelce back, Chris Jones back, and they will be perfectly fine. But week one matchup, we got the Tennessee Titans heading to New Orleans to face off against that Saints team led by Derek Carr. I think this will be a back and forth affair, but I do like the Titans' advantages in this game. But I do have a couple things. We're just going to dive into it. I think the Titans need to take advantage of this offensive line of the Saints, and specifically Trevor Penning. He's the epitome of a great run blocker, but a awful pass blocker. I think there's nobody that the Titans need to fear within that interior line as well. I think Ryan Ramczyk, he is a decent tackle, and I think he will play pretty well throughout the game. But everybody else on that offensive line, I think this defensive pass rush can take great advantage of, bringing in Travis Gibson, Caleb Murphy, Danico Autry, and Jeffrey Simmons should eat. Harold Landry coming back from that ACL injury. All accounts looks like he's going to play in week one. He's been dealing with the abdomen injury more so than anything this week, but it looks like he's suiting up, and I'm super excited to see those stunts come back into play and having him out there in that wide 9. Having that athleticism out there is going to be great. And then we got Rashad Weaver and a couple others in there. Super excited to see this. And then Azeez Al-Shaair, a great blitzing linebacker as well. So I think Mike Vrabel can play with this defensive front and make Derek Carr's life a living hell in week one. But switching to the other side of the field, I think the Titans need to take advantage of these cornerbacks. And obviously, they do have Marshawn Lattimore out there being one of the premier corners in the league. I don't think they necessarily have to win that battle to win this game. I like the Titans matchups against Alontae Taylor, which obviously the Titans are just spitting in the face of Vols fans, again, by not drafting Alontae. Just kidding. But I think Alontae in the slot is just a guy. And then Paulson Adebo, these are both physical cornerbacks that I think the Titans can take advantage of with Traylon Burks and DeAndre Hopkins. And we'll see who else they sprinkle in there. If it's NWI, if it's Chris Moore, if it's Kearis Jackson, we'll see. But I think they take advantage of those players more so than Marshawn Lattimore. This is a team that's not going to shadow similarly to the Titans. So Lattimore is going to be on the side of the field, and that's what it is. So I think with the play action game, I think they can definitely take advantage of that. And lastly, my third thing is they need to get Tajay Spears involved. I'm not going to say Sharp again, like I've said a dozen different times already. But Tajay Spears, this is his coming home party. Playing at Tulane, this is a revenge game for him. They drafted, as the Saints, drafted Kendre Miller 10 spots ahead of where the Titans grabbed Tajay. So being in New Orleans for his first game of his young career, I think Tajay has something to prove. I think he can be very, very effective coming out of the backfield. I don't necessarily think they need to bring Derrick Henry off the field at those point in times as well. So I think I would love to see both of them in the backfield and a split back, more gun formation. But getting into these 11 and 21 personnels, I think will definitely take advantage of the secondary of the Saints. My favorite matchup for the game, even though I don't think they necessarily need to win the matchup, I want to see how Burks plays against Lattimore. I know he'll be matched up on him more than a few times, and I just want to see if he's taken that next step forward. Can he make this a 1A, 1B with DeAndre Hopkins? And I am super excited to see it. I don't know how it's going to play out, but it's going to be a great matchup. But that brings me to my predictions. I do think this is going to be a low-scoring affair for the most part. I think the running game of the Saints will be lackluster, to say the least, with Kendre Miller out. Alvin Kamara is suspended, so that leaves it on Jamal Williams and Taysom Hill to really carry this load. And I think the Titans' run defense is one of the best in the league, ranked first last season in yards per game. So I think ultimately they stop the run, they establish the run, and we'll have a few more big plays than the Saints. I have us winning 20-10. Super excited for week one. I can't believe it's 2 sleeps away. It's going to be really hard to sleep tonight, but also tomorrow. But let's go ahead. We're going to hop into my season predictions. Week by week, we'll do a very quick little tidbit on that. We'll move on to the next one. So week 2, we got the LA Chargers. So this is a great team. Obviously, I have us winning week 1, so I have us losing this week. I think Justin Herbert is going to establish himself as a top 5 quarterback in this league this season. And with Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, and Quentin Johnston now at the receiving core, if they stay healthy, I think this is going to be a very dangerous team. And ultimately, I think they just score more points than this. That's as easy as it is. And sometimes it is that simple. The week after that, we got the Browns game. So this is going to be a good matchup in the fact that these are 2 very similar teams. I do not believe in Deshaun Watson, though, and Amari Cooper, that they have one weapon. I've never been a believer in Elijah Moore, and I don't think we need to worry about that. And I think ultimately we stop Nick Chubb and take advantage of that defense. I have us winning that game. So we're going win, loss, win at that point in time. And then we got the Bengals in week 4. So Joe Burr, we know he is the Titans' kryptonite at this point in time. And until I see it, I will not project a win there. So 2-2. Flip-flop, flip-flop. Then we got the Colts. First AFC South division meeting of the year. Anthony Richardson, all signs point to he'll be the quarterback, and I do believe in him long term to be a good quarterback, just on his physical gifts and what I saw as he moved through progressions over at Florida. I didn't think they did the best to their abilities to support him, but he needs reps. And ultimately, I don't think he'll be ready by that game. So I think we'll take advantage of it, especially with Jonathan Taylor. They just don't have the weapons to put up points against this Titans defense. I think we take advantage of that and we win that game. Then we go to London against the Ravens. I hate those Ratbirds. But ultimately, I think Lamar Jackson and these players that they're bringing in, I think he's going to take advantage of us, and we play decent against them, but we lost the last meeting. Ultimately, they did beat us out of the playoffs a couple years back. So I do have us taking that L in London and having a long flight back home. But that does lead us into the bye week as well, before we face against the Falcons in those Houston Oilers jerseys. And man, am I excited for that. But I do think that we know Mike Vrabel's past in coming off bye weeks. I think there is no way in hell that Arthur Smith is going to beat Mike Vrabel in those jerseys in that debut after having that salty taste in their mouth after the Ravens game. I have us winning that game 4-3 at this point in the season. And then we are kind of at that midpoint. This is where we determine what this team is. Following that, we play against the Steelers and Kenny Pickett, and they have quite a bit of hype around them this season with their wide receivers, and Najee Harris looks to be healthy. I think Najee at some point in the time of the season could potentially lose that job. I've never been a big believer in him. And the Steelers, they've had our number for quite a while now, but I do see us winning that game and putting together our first back-to-back wins of the season. Week 10, we got the Buccaneers, which is a team that should be contending for a top 3 to 5 pick in next year's NFL draft. Big OU guy, so I love Baker, but he is not the answer there. Mike Evans wants out. Chris Godwin looks like he's following suit as well. I ultimately think the Titans dominate that game and put together that little 3-game win streak. That puts them at 6-3. Things are turning that tide. And then we have our first game against the Jaguars in week 11. Jaguars fans have huge heads at this point in time, and we've seen it all offseason. They have one good year where they won 7 straight, and the Titans lost 7 straight after dealing one of the most historic injury-ridden seasons in the past, barring the one that they had 2 years ago. Ultimately, I think this is still the Titans' division to lose. But I do have us dropping that first game, dropping to 6-4. From there, we got week 12 matchup against the Panthers and Bryce Young. I think Bryce is going to be a great quarterback in this league. I think he will still be healthy at this point in time. The size thing is not a huge concern to me. I think he does take care of his body and won't take those huge hits. Ultimately, they will come, but I do think he will bounce back. And I did like what I saw in the preseason, but it's not enough. Mike Vrabel takes advantage of the rookie quarterback, leading us to a 7-4 record. And then we have our second game against the Colts in week 13. At this point in time, Anthony Richardson, it's still status quo, super easy, 8-4. And then we have the Dolphins game. So I think this could be a very big defining factor for the Titans this season. The Dolphins, they're a track squad. They've got Raheem Mostert, Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, of course, Devon A-Chain. They've got speed all over. And I think the Titans will play this game very tight in the first half, but ultimately in the second half, I think people just get free. I think we get a couple long touchdowns from the Dolphins, and a looks similar to that Florida State LSU game we saw just a little bit back. And ultimately it's a closer than what the score says, but I think the Dolphins do end up blowing us out in that game, dropping us to 8-5. Then we got the Texans debut. So we know our historic past this last couple seasons against the Texans. I'm pretty happy they drafted CJ Stroud. I never believed in the kid. So he can definitely prove me wrong, especially here. And it's still very early in the career, so I could definitely be wrong, as I'm wrong a lot of the times. But ultimately, I think Derrick Henry will take over in this game. He only needs one more 200-yard rushing game to be the most 200-yard rushing games ever. So I ultimately think we take advantage of that, pick off CJ a couple times, and walk into 9-5 at that point in time. Going into Week 16, we got the Seahawks. So Geno Smith is a very intriguing player in the NFL. He comes into the league as a high draft pick, is awful for years, and then comes to Seattle and plays lights out. It makes you almost question if Russell Wilson was ever good or if it's just a Pete Carroll system. But ultimately, they have a great wide receiver core, adding in Jackson Smith and Jigba to that roster with Tyler Lockett, who might be the most underrated player in the entire NFL year in and year out, and then DK Metcalf, of course. They also have Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet running the ball. So I think this is a very good offensive team, and they can play defense. So ultimately, I do see us losing to the Seahawks. This is one of those pick'em games for me. This puts us at 9-6 at that point in time. And then we have the second game against the Texans in Week 17. Ultimately, I think we just dismantle that game. I think the Texans have lost their will to live by that point in time in the season, and they are just looking at the draft picks going forward. So I have us dominating that and going in 10-6. So then we have Week 18, Jacksonville Jaguars. At this point in time, we are sitting at 10-6. I have them sitting at 9-7, and this game did making or breaking that AFC South championship. So ultimately, I think Ryan Tannehill plays lights out in this game. Traylon Burks and Chigakonkwo, they play great. We end up winning this game in a very convincing fashion, securing the AFC South championship, but at the same time eliminating the Jaguars from wild card contention, dropping them down to 9-8. So leading us into the playoffs, I think that's great. We're sitting at 11-6. Obviously, I have us winning the AFC South. But from there, let's go ahead. We'll hop into the other divisions real quick. I'll give you my predictions for those, and then we'll got a couple other things from there, and we'll call it a day. So AFC North, I think this one's pretty simple. The Bengals run away with that division. I think they are just a great team. They're definitely a Super Bowl contender. The AFC West, very similarly, the Chiefs, I think they get healthy. They get Travis Kelce back. They get Chris Jones back. And I think this team is off and running to the races and could definitely be, again, competing for that Super Bowl. The AFC East. So this one, they bring Aaron Rodgers to town, now making him the oldest AFC quarterback, by the way, and taking Ryan Tannehill's mantle. I think they have one of the premier pass catchers in Garrett Wilson. Loved what we saw last season. I think he is that guy. Breece Hall and Dalvin Cook leading the charge at the running back positions. They had a great defense last season. They almost carried Zach Wilson a long ways. So with Aaron Rodgers, I think that's the missing piece, and I think this is going to be a great team this year. And ultimately, I have the Jets winning that, of course. And that leads us into the NFC. So I have the NFC South to kick it off. And this one, rationale might not be there, but my heart's with it. I have the Falcons taking this. I think Arthur Smith is a great NFL coach, and I think Bijan Robinson and Drake London are two great young players on offense side of football. If Desmond Ridder puts it together, I think Arthur can just coach his way to that point. And ultimately, it's going to be them and the Saints I see competing. But I have the Falcons winning it. The next, we got the NFC North. So we saw it last night. I had this prediction long before that, but I have the Lions winning the NFC North. I think they just have too many pieces on offense and on defense. They're young. They have a great coach, and I ultimately see them winning that NFC North. And then from there, we got the NFC West. I just like I predicted that they'll probably beat us in their game, I have them winning their division, the Seahawks. I think Pete Carroll's still a great coach. I think Geno can uphold what he's did last season. And ultimately, I think they take that next step forward. And then from there, we got the NFC East. That one, I could ultimately see really anybody winning that division. I think everybody has a chance. And I do believe in Sam Howell. I do not think he is good enough to win the season this year. I do have the Giants winning this. Ultimately, I think Brian Daboll is a great NFL coach, specifically for the quarterback position. And I think Daniel Jones is a great sleeper this season, not only in fantasy football, but just in general with the standard media. I think them and Saquon Barkley, that in guys like Jalen Hyatt, I think they're going to be a great team. And I think they can send the Cowboys packing yet again for another season. And that brings me to my Super Bowl predictions. So I think the NFC side has the Lions coming out. And then on the other side of the ball, I have the AFC East Jets getting to the Super Bowl. And ultimately, I have the Lions winning it. I just like the pieces that they put together there. I love Malcolm Rodriguez at the linebacker position. I love this pass rush. I love the receivers they have. I think Amon-Ra St. Brown is that guy, and he will haunt Titans fans' dreams for a very long time, long after he's retired, especially since he should have been a Titan, and instead we got stuck with Des Fitzpatrick, as we know. So that leads us into the NFL awards for the year. So we'll start with NFL MVP. So this one, coming out of that same division, I think the Bears have put together a lot of pieces on offense. And I think Justin Fields is the best rushing quarterback in the league at this point in time, even over Lamar Jackson. I think this is going to look similar to the Cam Newton season. And I think Justin Fields is that guy. And I think he's a better quarterback than just Trevor Lawrence personally. But I think Justin Fields takes the MVP. And I think that is a huge underdog pick. But that's who I'm sticking with. From there, Offensive Player of the Year, the San Francisco 49ers. They have lots of pieces there. Ultimately, most of them struggle to stay healthy. So I have CMC taking it. I think George Kittle will go down with injury. Debo could go down with injury. Ayuk could go down with injury. And definitely CMC could go down as well. But if he stays healthy, I think he takes it and runs away with it. And then Defensive Player of the Year, I got Aiden Hutchinson. I think he is bound for a second-year breakout. Ultimately, we saw him not get a sack last night, but he definitely affected that game, especially with Patrick Mahomes, not letting him stay on his mark. And I think the sacks will come. I think he could be in potential to lead the NFL in sacks this year. And then that brings us to our rookies. So we have a couple great guys that we can pick from. I think Bijan Robinson is probably the favorite, but I'm going with Bryce. I think this is just a quarterback award, and it has been year in and year out. So even if Bijan outperforms Bryce, I think ultimately the voters still go with Bryce, unfortunately. But yeah, from there, we got the defensive side of the ball. This one is definitely a dark horse pick, I'll definitely say, but I am excited for it, and that is Emmanuel Forbes. Plays for the Washington Commanders. Super slender guy. No matter what position he played in the NFL, he's going to be probably the smallest one on the field. But he does have the length. He does have the athleticism, and he knows how to play the game of football. I think he could come away with quite a few picks this season. I think he's great in man. I think he's good in zone. I could see him taking a couple to the house, and ultimately I think that wins it for him. From there, NFL Comeback Player of the Year. This one's probably the easiest pick out of all of them. It's Damar Hamlin. After what we saw on the field last year, even for him to step foot on a field again, I think that secures it pretty easy. But yeah, that's all of them. Next, let's talk a little fantasy football. Let's go with starts of the week. And I plan on doing this every week, but we'll dive into them. I'm just going to give you a couple decent sleepers. They might be on your waiver wire on the back end of your roster. I could come on here every week and say, hey, start Justin Jefferson and Derrick Henry. I probably won't talk a lot of Titans on here just to show no bias. But let's go ahead. I'll give you one at each position. Quarterback position. We're starting out with Geno. We've talked about him a couple times on the show already. I think against the LA Rams, this isn't the Rams that won the Super Bowl. We know that. I think Geno can take advantage of this. Jackson Smith and Jigba is leaning towards playing is what it kind of looks like after having that hand surgery. I think with that and Kenneth Walker dealing with the groin as of yesterday, I think this is a team that'll win the game. And I think Geno could put up 3 touchdowns plus in this. So super excited for that one. I have Geno on a lot of back ends of my rosters, and he is starting a lot this week. From there, the running back position, it's not Bijan. It's Brian Robinson Jr. versus the Arizona Cardinals. The Arizona Cardinals are tanking. I mean, that's just what it is. I think Brian Robinson will see a lot of carries this year, but specifically in this game, obviously Antonio Gibson Jr. being that 1A, 1B to them. Brian Robinson, I think, ultimately takes that and runs away with it as we progress through the season. I think he is a good running back. So I think he'll see 20-plus touches in this game, could definitely go over 100 yards. He'll catch a couple balls. So even if you're playing a PPR, I think this could definitely be a good candidate for you to put in your flex or your RB2 position. Wide receiver, Dallas Cowboys. We got Brandon Cooks versus the Giants. So Brandon Cooks has just been consistent no matter where he's been. He's been on a billion teams at this point in time. And somebody needs to play second fiddle to CeeDee Lamb. And Dak Prescott, they're going to air out the ball a lot. And they're going to get the ball to Pollard, I'm sure, quite a bit. And CD, but I think there's still going to be plenty on the table for Brandon. I think this is more so a PPR play or point per reception play. In your standard leagues, I would lean away from this one just because I don't think he has the opportunity to really score. Could prove me wrong, but that's where I'm going with that. And then we got the tight end position. Tight end is such a fickle position just because you're hoping they get a touchdown and you're hoping they got a couple catches for a couple yards. I think Tyler has the opportunity to definitely have a great week 1 against Seattle, especially with Cooper Kupp being out. He probably would have been my pick regardless if Cooper played, but that might add another 1 or 2, 3 targets to him. And ultimately, I think that they're going to lean on him a little bit. So I like Tyler Higbee in that one. Next up, we got defense. So defense side of the ball, I really didn't want to pick this one. But ultimately, like I said earlier, I don't think Anthony Richardson is ready for week 1 or just to play in the NFL. He'll definitely play. I just don't think he'll be good. I think he'll give the ball up a couple times. And that leads me to starting Jacksonville. They've got some pieces over there. And ultimately, regardless, even if AR does play well, I don't think they have the pieces to put up a lot of points in that game. So in a low-scoring affair for them, just leads me to give a little bit of praise to Jacksonville in that week 1 matchup. And the kicker, this one doesn't matter. Throw whoever you want out there. You could throw Nick Folk out there for all you wanted. But this is more an indictment on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think the Minnesota Vikings will score plenty of points. Tampa Bay, they have some pieces on defense, so I do think they could get some stops there. And the green zone and Greg the leg just puts it in. So ultimately, I think that's where it is. But that covers everything today, guys. We kept it under 30 minutes. I'm happy with that. This is going to be one of the longer shows of the season. Looks like we do have one comment. Big Tony says he's got Kupp, Watson, and Kelsey in the same league. Yeah, that's not the best. I'm assuming he's talking about Christian Watson. Looks like he's dealing with some hamstring stuff, and that sucks, especially so early in the league. I don't have a lot of Watson in any of my leagues. I don't have any Kelsey, really. I do have plenty of Kupp, and I've actually traded for a couple Kupps just because I do think he can come back maybe next week. If not, even if he goes on IR and he's out for multiple weeks, I think it'll make up towards the end of the season. But, yeah, that's the only comment it looks like that we got today. So thanks for checking out the first edition, guys. We're going to do this every week going forward. But remember, tighten up, and we'll talk to y'all soon.